The 12th of June 2022, 1 week from now, marks the third anniversary of the first teaser trailer for the sequel to Breath of the Wild. The ominous presentation provided a dichotomy to the original game's trailer, which basked in the freedom of exploration and open spaces of a Hyrule unleashed from linear design. In this trailer, the space was claustrophobic and sinister, a dark journey through the underground caves, climaxing with Link and Zelda coming across the mummified remains, what has universally been understood to be the remains of Ganondorf, King of the Gerudo. Adding to the tension is the mystery of a strange green hand planted firmly on the chest, streaming in spirals to the ceiling, comprised of swirling text reminiscent of Gerudo symbology. The trailer ends with the ground shaking, images of Link and Zelda appearing to fall as the mummy comes to life, with the green hand taking center stage as it reaches out to Link, creating a fusion with his arm and a flurry of action shots and dramatic sounds. Overall, the trailer created a buzz of speculation and excitement as fans wondered what this might mean for the sequel as a whole. And although we've since been blessed with more footage in the second reveal trailer at E3 in 2021, and some 7 seconds or so on the delay announcement by IG Enuma, details still remain sparse and some of the biggest mysteries from the first trailer remain unanswered. Of these, arguably the greatest mystery surrounds the green hand. Who or what is it? And what role does it play, not only in the events we see in the trailer, but also in how Link's gameplay might be affected in Breath of the Wild 2. Today, I'm going to put forward an idea as to who the hand might belong to, as well as reasons why it makes a lot of sense considering what we know currently. You see, I think that the hand that is gripping so tightly to the mummified remains we see in the trailer is the hand of Ganondorf himself. Now let me tell you why. Before we kick off, please note that spoilers for Twilight Princess and other games in the franchise will arise, so be warned. The most obvious question you might have at this point is how Ganondorf can be holding Ganondorf, which is a really valid point. To explain, I think the owner of the hand is not Ganondorf from this world or era. No, I believe the hand is that of Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. And I've got more than a few reasons to back this up. So let's get into them. As a quick refresher, Twilight Princess occurs in the child timeline and following the events of Ocarina of Time. In this chronology, Ganon is eventually captured and set to execution at the Arbiter's grounds by the Seven Sages. Before his death, however, Ganon is imbued with the power of the Triforce of Power, allowing him to break his confinements and instantly murder one of the sages in retribution. The remaining sages realize that Ganon's power is simply too great, and thus the Mirror of Twilight is used to banish Ganon to exile in the Twilight Realm, the very same place a rebellious faction known as the Interlopers had been sent in Hyrule's past, when their potent magic threatened the royal family and the kingdom at large. Many years on, Ganon manages to build back his strength and forms an alliance with Zan, prince of the ruling family in Twilight, offering to house his power within the young dissident, and eventually leading to the invasion of Hyrule by the Twilight, an incident that kicks off the events of the game. At the end of Twilight Princess, the scene shows Ganon impaled by the Master Sword, with the Triforce of Power fading before he looks up to see Zant. Zant performs a neck crack which appears to end Ganon, then mysteriously disappears. Midna is restored by the light spirits and destroys the Mirror of Twilight as she exits Hyrule to head home. A lot happens. So how does this relate to what we see in the trailer? Well, let me explain. It is heavily implied throughout the series that the Triforce of Power grants unimaginable strength to its bearer, rendering them virtually indestructible. Now, although Ganon is impaled with the sword at the end of the game, implying his death at the hands of the hero Link, Ganon has survived the same injury when confronted with the sages. You might argue that the Triforce of Power had left him, but Hyrule Encyclopedia suggests that the Triforce of Power remains within Ganon, but notes him as eliminated, quote unquote. I find eliminated to be a strange term to use here, especially considering the document goes out of its way to imply that Ganondorf still retains the Triforce of Power. How can you retain a Triforce of Power when you've been eliminated? So here's how I believe this curious scene plays out. In the scene where Zant explains his rise to power over Midna, he reflects on his meeting with Ganon, who states that he will house his power within Zant, that being the power of the Triforce piece he retains. Zant even goes so far as to say that his master would resurrect him, a curious fact that hints that there's more to this union than initially thought. So when Zant mysteriously appears right at the end of the battle between Link and Ganondorf, I believe that Ganon's essence or spirit is transferred to Zant then and there, where he lives on, whisked back to the Twilight Realm. In the critical scene, we witness Ganon make a prophetic threat. Do not think that this ends here. The history of light and shadow will be written in blood. Following this, he looks down at his hand, which shows the Triforce of Power blinking, indicating it's running low on batteries, not leaving him, as most believe. He then looks up to see his apprentice, where the two meet eyes prior to Zant performing the next snap that removes all signs of life from Ganon's eyes. It is in that moment that Ganon is transferred within Zant, performing the next snap to ensure that Link and Zelda would be convinced that Ganondorf's truly gone. And if you're wondering why Midna would not immediately seek assistance if she stumbled upon Zant when she travelled back to the Twilight Realm, this can easily be explained by her decision to shatter the Mirror of Twilight. In this act, she chose to cut off her communication with the Light World, thus any threats awaiting her on return would be unknown to Link and Zelda, as they peacefully strode off into the sunset. But there's much more to this connection than convenient plot hole. The crack of the neck Zant performs that is implied to end Ganon is ironically the exact same action we see the mummified corpse commit in the trailer as it comes back to life in the crescendo of events that follow. It happens in a way that mimics the movement to precision. I don't think it's a coincidence. But maybe you need more convincing. Well, luckily there's plenty more evidence to support the theory. In reviewing the position of the alleged Ganondorf in the trailer, his figure appears to be unceremoniously wrought back over itself, arms flailed out to his sides as if in an agonizing scream. It's the kind of action that sticks with you. It's something you don't see very often, if ever. So you might be interested to know that that exact same action is performed by none other than Zant himself in his monologue to Link and Midna in the events of Twilight Princess. But wait, there's more. If we assume that the hand is that of Ganondorf from Twilight Princess, the union with Link in the trailer begins to make much more sense, acting as a means of possession, which Ganon has used before, when possessing Princess Zelda in Twilight Princess to be his puppet. The effect on Zelda's body is very similar, showing a dark discoloration and similar patterns to the skin as we see on Link once the union is complete. In Twilight Princess, Ganon mentions how the hatred and malice of the Twilight Realm was his nourishment, and it's not unreasonable to think that the same connection he has to malice in the Twilight Realm, appearing to Zant in a ball of malice energy himself, would not create a similar draw in the world of Breath of the Wild, an environment plagued by the physical manifestation of malice. We know Ganondorf is a very powerful mage, and the spell binding the hand to the mummified remains could be argued as a skill few would possess other than Ganon himself. Another observation in Breath of the Wild that supports this idea is the second last entry in Zelda's diary, where she states, "I had a dream last night. In a place consumed by darkness, a lone woman gazed at me, hallowed by blinding light. I sensed she was not of this world. I don't know if she was a fairy or a goddess, but she was beautiful. Her lips spoke urgently, but her voice did not reach me. Would I have heard her if my power was awoken? Or was my dream simply a manifestation of my fears? I'm sure I will know the answers soon, whether I wish to or not." Zelda refers to a lone, beautiful woman in a place consumed by darkness, speaking urgently with her words not reaching Zelda. Sounds very much like Midna to me. In fact, Midna is the first person that comes to mind when reading this diary entry. Should it be Ganon trying to return to Hyrule once again through this mysterious ritual under the depths of Hyrule's underground, then no doubt Midna would be doing her best to warn this incarnation of the spirit of the goddess. After all, it was Zelda who saved her life in Twilight Princess, a kindness Midna would be desperate to repay, considering the impending threat that awaits should Ganondorf succeed. And then of course there's the other factors that reinforce the connection between these two worlds. In Twilight Princess, Ganon turns into Dark Beast Ganon, the same title as that we see in Breath of the Wild. But whereas in Breath of the Wild and other entries, Ganon's beast form is his final manifestation, Twilight Princess differs. Here, Dark Beast Ganon is the second phase of a battle that goes through 4 distinct phases, including one on horseback, and finally a showdown of swords whilst on foot. This doesn't align with the typical progression nor the proposed history for Breath of the Wild. In fact, whilst many have aligned Ganon's transformation to Dark Beast Ganon as the pivotal moment referred to in History of Hyrule from creating a champion, cursory glance shows that this is not the case. Ganon did transform, but ultimately he transformed back into Ganondorf for another 2 phases of the battle, at the end of which no such sealing ritual takes place as described in the events from the distant past. In respect to the mummified body, I wholeheartedly agree that he is not Ganon from Twilight Princess. For one, his ears differ in the fact that they are rounded and not pointy, It could be inferred then that Mummy Ganon is from a different time or era, purely based on the assumption that he has never assumed the Triforce of Power. You see, in Ocarina of Time, it was demonstrated that Ganon, when under the influence of the Triforce, evolved pointed ears like that of the Hylians over a period of time. Under this premise, it could be a situation whereby the version of Ganon we see in Breath of the Wild is a victim of the ritual, designed to bring the original Dark Ganondorf back to the Light World and using a variant of himself to enable the transition. The hand appears to be clutching at the corpse's chest, and this could be Twilight Princess Ganon holding the heart of his own incarnation in this world to find his way back, as the Mirror of Twilight was broken by Midna. This connection is also allowing him to feed off the malice being drawn into the figure beneath him, evidenced by the malice traversing up the hand almost akin to a parasite feeding. I also think that the mummified version of Ganon looks like he was wearing restraints. The bracelets on his wrists have chains hanging from them, and appear more like restraints than jewelry to me. This figure is draped in robes, not armoured as we typically see Ganon in other games, and his position in the middle of this space harkens to a sacrificial altar, similar to those that we see in real life. Surrounding this event are pointed stone intrusions that, oddly enough, bear striking resemblance to those adorning the light spirit springs we see in Twilight Princess. Patterns on the rock are unique to that game alone, and it seems strange to have them feature in this critical scene if no connection was intended. Finally, we have Palmyra Ruins, a shrine quest involving the collection of pieces for a mirror that bears more than a striking resemblance to the Mirror of Twilight. Now, whilst this piece in Breath of the Wild is not the exact same mirror we see in Twilight Princess, it does share a similar design to the Dark Mirror, one featured in Four Swords Adventure, a game where history describes an identical scenario involving the banishment of a tribe of ancient magic wielders to another realm, in this case the Dark World, whereby a new incarnation of Ganondorf stole a sacred trident from the Gerudo tribe and brought a malevolent army into the fray in an attempt to gain power over the kingdom. Sounds familiar? The same point acts as a counter to the claim that Twilight Princess Ganon could still be alive. I mean, after all, considering the new incarnation of Ganondorf featured in Four Sword Adventures occurs after the events of Twilight Princess, how could that be? With only one male Gerudo born every 100 years to the Gerudo tribe, how could a new male Gerudo be born and named Ganon if the old incarnation was still alive, you might ask? Well, again, this could be answered in understanding that they are different realms entirely. That when Twilight Princess Ganon returned to the Twilight Realm, he left his physical body in Hyrule, which was quote-unquote eliminated, opening the Gerudo tribe up to the next incarnation of a male within their ranks. There's more to support this theory, but for the sake of time, I think I'll leave it there for now. To be fair though, I can accept the many reasons why people might dispute this entirely. For example, some might say that Breath of the Wild is a reboot of the franchise and thus the inclusion of a character from a past game would feel forced and out of place, which is fair enough. Alternatively, it could be argued that the hand is performing more of a good deed, trying to hold the malice at bay and makes the tough decision to save Link. Again, I can understand that other ideas or points of view exist and could even be more likely in the sequel, but let me leave you with one more intriguing thought. Let's imagine that Ganon prophesized his threat at the end of Twilight Princess, that the conflict was far from over and that the history of light and shadow would be written in blood. Suddenly, this dialogue would mean a lot more and have far greater consequence than most would assume, particularly when you consider that microsecond shot where we see the hand reach for the mummy's chest in a burst of light and shadow. You could almost call it foreshadowing. And one last concept for you. Should this hand indeed be that of Ganondorf, the same from Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess, adorned with the Triforce of Power, then what would happen if he combined with Link in the same arm, with a 50% share or something along those lines, with Link carrying the Triforce of Courage? Could you imagine? Maybe he'd have a new symbol of sorts. Anyway, that's simply one idea about the mysterious hand. Will no doubt play a massive role in the sequel to Breath of the Wild. But what do you think? Do you agree with the ideas put forward, or have some other ideas of your own that you think will better suit the narrative? I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please leave a comment and let me know what you think. Feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. I hear a Lionel earns another arrow every time you do, so keep that in mind. On a side note, a massive thanks to my supporters. I really can't thank you enough. You guys rock. Thank you also to those who responded in relation to the Discord channel. I'm pleased to say the basics are nearly there and just a few things left to finalise before I send out a link to you all. Thanks for being patient in the meantime, but rest assured it is coming. I've got a very interesting video also already underway, so keep an eye out for that, as well as more theories than Korok seeds, so there's plenty more coming your way. As always, thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time here on GameSmiths.